Today, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Olena Bondareva, Global Head of HR or HR Director at airSlate, to the Digital HR Leaders podcast. Olena, welcome to the show. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. To kick things off, please could you share with our listeners a little bit about yourself, your role at airSlate, and the journey that got you to where you are today?
Hi, David. Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me here. So, I've been working in HR for more than 17 years, starting my career as a consultant, BWC, then switching to agriculture, outsourcing, outstaffing, then to being head of HR at Ubisoft, Ukraine, and most recently into SaaS and tech at airSlate. And they gave me like a real great global perspective on how HR is able to enable growth and resilience at the same time. And today I lead global people strategy across more than 6 countries, focusing on building systems, culture, leadership practices, and help organizations thrive.
That's a great introduction. We're going to be delving into all those areas of your role over the next sort of 45 minutes or so. When someone asks you, Elena, what you actually do as an HR leader, what's the story that you tell first?
The story I tell first now is if you take business strategy, I am the one to help you connect it to what do you do with people. So what your people strategy should look like so that you can continue growing your business. And it's always about business, of course, but people are the enablers. People are actually moving the wheels and pushing it forward. So I know that years ago when I just started working in HR, I was thinking, okay, I should be going into the leadership role because I see and I know how this can be done much better. It was more about policies years before, and now it's more about business impact, the growth, resilience, effectiveness of the organization. So the story has shifted from the processes to impact a lot.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because one of the things that I observe and we observe at Insight 222 around the HR field, and many of us have worked in HR for too long, to be honest with you, is that over the last decade, HR's kind of moved from being that support function, as you said, managing policy, managing risk, to being a much more a strategic partner to the CEO and the board. That's not the case in every company, of course, but and it was really interesting listening to you. What you said, the first thing you said is that your role as an HR leader is to connect business strategy to people. I think if I'd asked a lot of your peers 10 years ago, I wouldn't have got that answer. What do you think's kind of helped HR along that journey? And again, I see it as a good journey from being a support function to something that has more impact and adds more value and hopefully supports the people in the business as well. Love to hear your take.
I honestly think that over the time, the crisis has shown us that people are the most important asset of what the companies have. And without people and proper teams set up and how they work, the companies would not be able to thrive as they do today. And the more technology was introduced into our daily routine, the more the talent has become more critical into leading the further future of the organization. More easy things started to become very easy to implement, even with technology only. However, without people, you would not be able to be on top of everything. And that's where I think indeed business turned to HR was the question, okay, how can we do it better versus what we were doing it before?
Very good. And actually, that leads nicely to the next question, Olena. You joined airSlate. We were still during the pandemic at the time, or maybe coming out of the major part of the pandemic, and shortly after the war had started in Ukraine. And you mentioned that you were working in Ukraine for Ubisoft. So, and you're in I think you're based in Poland now. So that's a pretty extraordinary set of circumstances to be joining an organization as an HR leader, both professionally, but also, I presume, personally as well. What did those early days look like for you as an HR leader entering a new organization in a new country?
Oh, indeed, it was quite an adventure. I'll have many stories to tell. And for me, it was a year and something before the war started in Ukraine when I just joined airSlate. So my initial stages were a lot about building the trust fast, understanding what the current company has, as we've been already quite big when I joined, and I've been historically the first head of HR ever for this company. So honestly, I think it really tested me well, and after building the trust, it was a lot about safeguarding people. It was a lot about ensuring business continuity. So closer to the gossips that the war is about to start, we started shaping the business continuity plan, and I was the one leading the efforts for all the leadership team. In the end, we relocated and protected our teams ahead of time while really keeping the business running. And it was amazing to see how our teams were actually, building up together, and everyone who could work were working and filling in for the colleagues who were not able to do that. And actually, I think we really did great as a business at that time, really making sure that our customers do not notice anything in what is going on in the background. And at the same time, it really reinforms the HR team, how it was perceived by the employees. We were not only the support function just to come by the regular questions, but we always there proactively saying, hey, we recommend you to do this, take a look at this, come to us if you need anything over HR scope. And it was amazing, test to the whole HR team how we were able to be more universal than just HR specialists.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible journey. I mean, we saw during the pandemic how HR's kind of stepped up and supported organisations, not just with the usual support they provide, but in others, and checking in, making sure people are okay, understanding if people are working from home, for example, whether they had the tools to do their job. But in
Absolutely.
the situation that you've just described, that's even more extreme. It's not just that people are working from home; they're not. I mean, have to actually work from home. And you said you had to relocate the business and the people, presumably from Ukraine to Poland. I mean, from a personal perspective, that must have been a real challenge as well.
Absolutely. That's where we tested, the resilience of our team and my resilience personally. I didn't know that I was so resourceful and continue working in any circumstances further. Even it was a big emotional stress for everyone. It was a shock for multiple people, as nobody believed that it's going to happen. But at the same time, we had to worry also about the physical security of our colleagues and making sure that the business is running. So it was like having at least three jobs at the same time, while also being a mom as for me and keeping track of my family here. So it was amazing time, but also what we have learned is that the support of the team, of the company support, we've learned that we are more than just colleagues, and we actually were really supporting each other on every matter, whatever was falling in between, and that was really something amazing. So even the relocation to a new country for multiple employees we had at that time was more smooth, as we kept really nice community of people and making sure that everyone helps everyone with questions or whatever is needed here locally. But also we have built a really nice proactive plan on opening our hub in Poland half a year before. So we already had office established, we had some leadership here, and honestly, how the Polish team has hosted us, invited us, and took care of us was something outstanding. We were not able to believe that it's actually happening, and the level of support is still continuing until today.
Well, that's great. Well, I'm certainly from me and the team here, and I'm sure our listeners, we continue to wish you and your colleagues that have had to relocate well, now and then
Yeah,
and in the future as well, and hopefully that problem challenge will be resolved in the not too distant future as well.
hope so too. Yeah.
You mentioned you were the first head of HR in the company as well. So let's transition to that now. And I mean, even more of a challenge than it would usually be to do
Yeah.
that. What were the first three systems or processes that you stood up, and why did you focus on these these ones in particular?
So my plan when I just joined the company, I understood that we need to start with the basics. Like whatever is happening further, the basics are the most essentials. And we didn't have any proper HR infrastructure in place. So this is where I have run the multiple analysis on what needs this company, what this company needs today, what we will need in 5 and the next 10 years. So we started with picking the HRIS, and this is where we happily picked Hi Bob, and it's been really amazing collaboration. And thanks to them, actually, we're meeting today. So I do appreciate all the support we get from Bob. The next step was the ATS, and we have implemented the system to make sure that we are tracking the candidates to understand the best data which is accessible to us so that we are able to perform the best and hire the top talents now globally, since our strategy has changed and we globalized a lot. So the data has become even more essential to us. The second step was establishing the performance management system, and that has been supported with building from scratch the HR business partners function, which was not in place as well. So the performance management system has been upgraded. And then the next step was in the plan to establish the proper people data analytics flowing into the leadership meetings and discussions and the strategic discussions all the time. However, that has been replaced with the priority of ensuring the business continuity practices are set in the first place. And this is where we have put it as a fourth priority further, but it's heavily, actively developed at this moment in our company.
No, that's great. And why did you particularly pick those three processes first, or four processes first? I completely understand the business continuity piece coming in lately, and how did you get buy-in from senior leaders on those processes as well?
Yeah, so those practices are basically the foundation. Yeah, so like if we take the pyramid, without that foundation, any company would not be able to properly scale. And the risk would be that you can rather go further blindly. So, sort of guessing the plan rather than planning what actually has to be done according to what you see and how you measure it. And this is where the HR infrastructure enabled us to make sure that we are able to scale and analyze what size we need to be, how fast we need to move forward if we're going in the right direction. The performance management was a lot about we were willing to conquer the world, and at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we're able to focus and have predictable results so that people are able to deliver amazing outcomes within their areas of responsibility. And this is where the performance management system was in question, that everything should be planned. What do we want to achieve? How we want to see it happening? And what exactly is the outcome we want to see? So sort of planning backwards and driving proper performance expectations was about setting the plan on how we do, what we expect, and then how we measure so that people are able to deliver well. And then the data analytics definitely has been, over the last 10 years, in HR leaders community, quite a topic, as HR should become data driven. And this has been in my focus so that we are able to understand the numbers and also start predicting, thanks to those numbers, what's going to be happening next, so that we can advise to the business what to focus on and what to prioritize first. For the business continuity practices, it was rather a situation, right? So we wanted to make sure that the business is able to drive further. How we had a discussion with the leadership team. So basically, each situation, since the moment I joined, it was about speaking for people, speaking about people, but in the terms of business. So what the business wants to achieve versus how we're able to enable it through what is missing right now and which the gaps are. So the priority I took in these discussions was about a lot the effectiveness and the efficiency of the solutions, so that they would not cost too much to the business, but they're tailored to what the business really needs at this moment. And then the best providers were picked from the list.
No, very good. And I mean, really, all of what you've just talked about with those four priorities really links to what you said earlier about your job is to help connect strategy to people. And it's so great to hear from someone that's been in the people analytics field for quite a long time now, to hear a head of HR saying that one of the first processes that they wanted to set up was the data analytics, so you can have those conversations with senior leaders and make decisions, about what to do next, and also growth plans and everything else. So, and we'll dig into that a little bit more, Olena. That's really good. I mean, on that data point, obviously on the podcast, but also through the work we do at Insight 222 and all the conferences that I'm lucky enough to speak at around the world, get to speak to many companies, big, medium, small, across multiple industries, and particularly on the current status of HR and people analytics as well. And what I find more and more, which is a good sign, which talks to what we were talking about earlier about HR becoming more a strategic partner to the business. Senior leaders, they want to see the data, they want to see the people data, but they don't want to be overwhelmed by it as well. Maybe in the past, in HR, we've been guilty of putting 100-page decks in front of senior leaders with just lots of numbers in it. How do you decide as a head of HR what to put in front of senior leaders, and how do you make sure that the insights stick? And also, maybe more important to that, how do you get from insights to decisions to outcome?
Yeah, indeed, what you're saying is something which is quite a challenge for quite a number of my colleagues. Yeah, you have already a lot of data accessible. Some companies still do not have established, but having data accessible, I think it's a core and it's quite critical. So starting from, Ubisoft as an example, I have been using over 21 major HR KPIs to make sure to see the actual picture, what is going in all the areas, as we had more than 1,000 people in 2 studios in Ukraine. And at airSlate, when I just joined, we didn't have any data available. Everything had to be built and then ensured that the data is inserted properly. So when it goes to the principle that HR should have the data, indeed, I think HR should have a lot of data to be able to understand what is going on, analyze it from different angles, and see what the picture is. And when it goes to the leadership, of course, the leadership would not want to see everything in the background, what's going on under the table. And this is where the principle here is less is more. So we show the data that actually tells the story after we understood and after we analyzed it really well from different angles, what story we have, what's actually happening, and then connecting it to the strategy, understanding what is the issue, where do we want to go. It could be a retention of key talent, a retention of the top performers. It could be a time to productivity. How fast are we onboarding people? And if we're hiring the right people, which are able to onboard fast into our specific environment. And then leadership effectiveness as leaders has become very critical to drive the results for the business. So which major focuses were for the executive team to look at was on those major items. And then we would be making it actionable and simple, like zooming in into each specific area and then seeing what exactly can be done by the leadership. What was also insightful to us is once we were showing then a bit more of data to the leadership, they started asking more questions. They started asking, what is happening if I do this? Why did it happen? And then connecting them to their personal day-to-day actions. And then their leaders were more curious how they're impacting and how that results into their teams and the productivity. So this is where I would be talking probably about major 5, maximum 10 data points to be presented to your leadership team so that you can cover all the HR areas properly and then make a story. But this has to be picked according to your current situation in your business, depending on the stage of your development and where do you want your teams to be in the future.
No, very good. And, as you said, the data you report and the insights you provide, connect them to the business outcomes that you're trying to achieve as an organization. And as you said, that evolves depending on the situation that you're in at the moment. And actually, when you talked about the 3 systems or processes that you stood up first, putting HiBob in place or any HRIS system, gives you some data, obviously, it gives you a lot of data. And you said then it's a case of how do you then filter that data and make sure you're presenting what's important with the insights to senior leaders. So, no, really good. They're good to hear that. I think I'm sure a lot of your peers listening will be who are maybe in a similar situation in terms of standing up HR. We'll be getting a lot of inspiration from this, Olena. So thank you. You mentioned leadership effectiveness. Obviously, it's a huge topic. It's hugely important. But I'm also aware you mentioned that obviously you're providing insights and data around that. But I also know that I understand that you've been doing some internal research on this topic as well. So when you measure leadership effectiveness, what are some of the signals that you look out for? And what have you found that distinguishes leaders who drive real clarity and engagement from those that don't?
Thank you for this question. And indeed, it was quite a topic for our organization within the last year at least. So we were constantly getting different data on different leaders when understanding their results they are reading together with their team. Those were different versus the actual results we were getting from the engagement surveys, where the people were rather very happy and very satisfied with the leader, but answering the questions in a different way when you would be asking them, how well do you understand the department strategy? How well do you understand the company strategy? And those were quite often different. So the leaders which actually were driving the results and pushing the teams to get better results, sometimes they would be getting amazing feedbacks from their teams as being really great leader, the best ever manager, a go-to person, and really like on the top of the top for recommending my manager as a great manager to work with. And those managers which were rather more demanding would be getting a bit lower ratings, but at the same time, their ratings in the area of understanding the future of the business, why we do these things, were also higher, while not being so liked by the team personally. And that's where we were starting to become more curious. What is actually leadership effectiveness in our organization? And how do we want to push it even further so that the actual true leaders which drive business results have more empowerment and are focusing on the right things, not just being liked by the team members. And that's where we started connecting different parameters into one story in one picture, and it actually worked really nice for us. And that was something as a story to tell, the most challenging one, to connect into one story to the executive leadership, as we had to also use some anecdotal data connected with the business outcomes and then come up with the full report.
Yeah, it's that balance, isn't it? You know, who are the leaders that drive results versus who are the leaders that are liked? And as you said, they might not necessarily be the same. Yeah, and it's kind of striking that balance, I guess, between that. And then with that information, how does that help? How obviously helps the business understand, what is an effective leader in airSlate. Is that helping you with things like training, mentoring, recruitment and selection, those sorts of things as well?
Absolutely. It gave us an additional, star insight to how further build the leadership development program. As when finalizing and connecting the dots, we realized that those leaders which were quite demanding with the results, but had more emotional connection with their teams. They were true leaders to their team members. They were able to balance out on also the feedback from the team. So the team engagement level continued to be very high while understanding the business and while delivering really great results. So they were really hardworking teams and delivering amazing outcomes. And we connected this indeed to the leadership programs, making sure that true managers understand that they are leaders in the first place and connecting emotionally to what their team would need to hear, to understand, to get clarified, and get supported on, also emotionally, when it's not only formally. It's very essential. And this is where we also injected this into the practices which were done by our HR business partners on daily routine, and checking in with the managers if they remember those best practices when being stressed to get those results done. And it's been over a year and a half for now, and we see really great results coming in also for the new leaders which just obtained this new role and are, as we know, sometimes can be struggling with new stress of the new role of managing the team.
That's really good. I mean, it's a great example, really, of the power of the right data when you collect it and you do the right analysis and you understand what it means and you get action taking on it, and then obviously you're improving that all the time, and that's connecting it to business results as well. And I think it's a very good example of how to use people analytics to drive business performance. um Continue slightly similar theme, beyond formal managers and leaders, there are also individuals who may not have a large or senior role but hold significant influence in connecting people and driving change. Um, I know you've done some work on this. How did you identify these people as well?
I think it's been really a challenge and one of the top questions any organization would have since COVID started. And we became more and more remote. Some companies even became full remote. And what was visible before in office became invisible, almost invisible at this moment for the organizations today. And that was one of the questions we started looking into, understanding that in tech, not only leaders are very important to drive the results, but also the employees, which are individual contributors, are very essential to make sure that the results are delivered, that the goals are understood, that the strategy is clear to everyone, and everyone is accepting and supporting and pushing towards the change we need to run every day as of today. And that's where we turn into understanding more of individual contributors in our organization. And we started to feel some pressure when trying to implement changes. We understood that some individual contributors sometimes were helping the organization, but in some other cases, they would rather be blocking that and complaining more and spreading that negativity over the organization. So that's where we started to analyze more the cross-functional ties, the tenure of employees, their engagement level, where they sit, how often do they come to the office, and how much are they a go-to person if someone wants something to be done quickly, or something to be implemented quickly, or something to be prioritized versus other things to be delivered for this project. And we found that out that we do have those individual contributors which know those invisible ties and know those invisible buttons in the organization, how to make them go faster and how to find the people which are right connections and make sure that things are done really more efficient, faster, and with bigger priority on quality and focus. And that's where we understood that our collaboration networks and the systems we use are very essential, but also asking employees on who is your go-to person if you have a question, or who is your go-to person if you don't know how to make something done which is outside of regular scope or outside of regular process. This would be given the organization additional insights. And at the same time, what we did next is we made sure that the HR team also includes the communication techniques into driving the changes. So usually when the organizations, like, huge ones, about 1,000 people, they would be planning any changes through the hierarchical structure, starting with the top leadership, then middle management, and then going to ICs through the middle management rather more often, having a regular all hands meeting. What we have understood would be much better to also inject throughout this process before implementing the changes, in engaging those influencers before getting their advice, asking them what they actually think, what's the actual reality versus how we see it from the side as HR or from top down as leadership, and whether this would actually work or would the employees sabotage it as a change. And that's where we started to get really honest, insightful answers and really interesting ideas how it could be twitched before it's actually adapted. This has resulted into the fact that it may take a bit more time. It may take a bit more different ideas which are not so polished in an aligned way, but this is a matter of someone who's working on the project and implementing new things is able to use or reject if that would be making sense. And I think it has been really invaluable additional asset for any company to use for the future on driving the change.
No, no, really good. So I mean, just summarizing that and tell me if I'm wrong on that. I mean, network analysis effectively to help understand both network analysis, both from understanding communication systems, who's collaborating with who, etc., but also actually surveys to ask people who they go to get things done, or who they go to I don't know, influence them on various topics. Understanding who those people are, those influencers, and maybe those blockers as well, and obviously taking action on around that, but then involving those influencers who may be individual contributors and not managers throughout that change process, both through the design of that change process and understanding what would work and what wouldn't work, and then working with them to roll that change out so you can speed things up. So again, connecting to the business so that if you're changing things within the organization, you're changing the things that are actually going to have an impact, and you're not just going through leaders and managers, which is traditional. You're actually working with some of those individual contributors that have a big influence, and actually can bring others along with that as well, and so you can get to effective change. So, no, really powerful. And in terms of those insights, in terms of because one of the challenges we see sometimes with doing the network analysis and finding out key influences in this case, and using that to support strategy and change and innovation, is who gets access to that data. I mean, do the individuals themselves understand that, or what? I mean, who gets those insights?
So the access to the data, who are the influencers, I guess would be staying at the level of the person, is us recognizing, hey, you're really valuable in the company, underlining this value and coming back with the questions and advice, which is driving the engagement further. So this would rather be staying in between these individuals, HR team and leadership team, as a collaborative point. We do not necessarily promote it internally in the organization, but whatever is naturally happening, we do support the positive vibes of it.
No, that's really good, and that leads to a next question. I just love interested to hear your thoughts on this. Should we as HR start designing career paths and reward systems that recognize influence and influencers, and not just maybe job titles and span of control and stuff?
I definitely do think this is very essential, especially while we know that technology is going at amazing speed at this moment. The more individual contributors and experts would be valued. And that's where we understand that a lot of the job is actually done by individual contributors. So they should be indeed looking into the ways, if they are not willing to lead or manage projects for people, they should understand that there is a path for them as experts further on so that they can grow their expertise. They can grow their expertise not only in this specific area of their um, uh, job, however, also in the area of the business of their current company, how it functions, how it works, what are the best ways to deliver. And when making sure that these people see the future, which looks bright, and even more they can impact in the future, I do think that this can be making very efficient organizations in the first place, as we will not need an extra overhead with big number of managers to be able to manage that further. But at the same time, people who actually know how to do the thing would be able to make it 10 times better, being more engaged and understanding that their word is heard, and that they are able to actually directly influence what the company is making for their customers.
Yeah, so it's super similar. It reminds me of an example I saw a few years ago now, where it was analysis of different sales teams within organizations, and this company, you know, rewarded salespeople like most based on how much they sold versus target. And when they actually started looking at the data in more detail, there was a number of individuals within those sales teams, different sales teams, who individually didn't didn't hit their sales numbers, but when they looked at the analysis and when they looked at some of the surveys that they were doing, was so important of enabling others to be successful, connecting the sales team with the product team, with the marketing team, or other big teams within the organization, doing a lot of the support work. And actually, when you started looking at this data, it gave you a much more deeper view of really of the value of individuals. And I think it does, as you say, it does open up then opportunities for you to think about career paths and to think about how you reward different people, maybe in the same team. Sales is an easy one for most people to comprehend, I guess, because typically companies reward salespeople or sales teams based on numbers obtained. So it's a very, very interesting. And as you said, as AI comes in and as work gets distributed further down the organization, these sorts of things are things that we may need to think about from a reward perspective. Which leads us nicely, we've managed to get quite a long way in without talking about AI. So I congratulate you, Elena, on that one. It's on pretty much every HR leader's agenda at the moment, but it's quite difficult sometimes to separate the hype from the reality. Where have you actually seen AI make a meaningful difference in your HR work?
Definitely. This has been a big project for us in the past year as well. And we were happy to implement AI chatbot to support our employees 24/7 with any questions they will have. As quite often, any HR representative is receiving the message or email like, sorry for a stupid question. And we feel that sometimes people may feel awkward on asking those questions, which may look basic, or they are finding it challenging to find information in the company handbooks. And this is where we're making sure that the chatbot is not only providing the data, but also giving the information needed at any time of the day. And it also decreased the operational workload on the HR team, so everyone is able to focus on more meaningful things every day. The second aspect was talent acquisition efficiency. So we implemented the system which actually allowed us to make the screening more efficiently, increase the pipeline of the candidates, outreach to bigger number of talents, and make sure that we are actually picking the top AAA players from the available market globally. And at the same time, we were able to continuously, quarter over quarter, increase the speed of closing the vacancies and finding those talents, while improving our numbers on the onboarding efficiency, on time to productivity, and at the same time of people staying and working for a long time further in the company. The last but not least would be in preparing analytics and also performance reviews. So in preparing analytics, it would be given the highlights out of the big number of data, how to connect the dots, as we not every organization has a dedicated HR analyst, our people data analyst person. And the same for us. We didn't hire anyone specifically, but we learned that each team member, each HR business partner knows how to work with data and trains up further the leadership. And that's where in preparing analytics, when connecting big number of dots and not necessarily having a lot of time to sit down with the only analytics topics, it was really amazing and helping us to look into one direction, second direction, and then see how that connects with our priorities. And for performance management, it has been also amazing, very simple one, but it was a shortcut to number of performance reviews and actually understanding how the person grew over the previous several years and what can be the future priorities to make sure that the person targets the right skills to develop realistically in the next several years, so that they are able to achieve the role they want to achieve in their careers further. So connecting multiple data points, even in the 360 feedbacks from colleagues over the years and planning the future, was also very useful insights we started receiving here.
Yeah, really impressive. So you've actually applied AI, across a lot of the work that you're doing in HR, and actually back to what we've talked about throughout the episode, Elena, some of the most important, the areas that you'd identified as being the most important areas that HR delivers in airSlate as well to the business. What I mean, you mentioned, and maybe this comes back to the three priorities that your four priorities that you identified at first around getting the right HR system in place, having a focus on performance management, having a focus on people data and analytics as well. What were some of the things that you needed to have in place at airSlate, whether that's processes, data quality, culture, etc., before AI could add value?
That's indeed a very tricky point, and the one which takes most of the time and effort of the team. So that each HR leader needs to understand that all team members have to value the accuracy of the data, and any data which is inserted into your system is clean and aligned with how you expect it to be inserted. So it has been an exercise to make sure that all we have already injected into those systems is correct and we can rely on it. And the second one would be the processes, so that all the processes we have are not jinxing what is already created, and further on we can rely on it in the future. The last but not least would be about the culture and everyone being in the same spot about understanding what is the future for us, how we are treating the future of us working with data and using the technology to help our job thrive. And this has been one of the things I also started injecting into the HR team as well, like over a year ago, to make sure that they understand how the technology works, what are the opportunities, how the data works, how do we look at the data. And that's where everyone started to be curious. And when creating the data, also responsible into the way it's managed further internally. So these three aspects, long term, I do think, they helped us at this moment, but it's only the beginning of the journey, of course, and the good background to start with.
That's really interesting about the data quality or data foundations. So some of the research that we've been doing at Insight 222 over the last couple of years, specifically around AI and HR, as it relates to people analytics, we've seen more and more organizations, investing time, effort, and resources now in having those right data foundations and data quality. And we've been talking about data quality and people analytics for a long time, and it seems that AI has almost acted as a bit of a Trojan horse to actually to help some companies start to invest a little bit more in that area. What are some of the things? I think one of the challenges organizations face is getting that communication out there and helping HR professionals, but also managers in the business understand the importance of entering the right data in the right system at the right time. I don't know if you've got any kind of guidance that you could maybe offer to some of your peers who might be listening to this episode, because I know that there will be some listening who are struggling with.
Definitely. So this has been a topic over multiple companies and leaders for the last several years, definitely. And I've been contacting and talking to other leaders, asking what do they have versus what we do in our company. And that's where I came up with this idea of the fact that whatever you ask to be inserted into the system has to be as simple, as short as possible, and easy to understand, so that there no gray area between how you understand it, how you shape it. If you ask employees and leaders to continue inserting this data into your system, the proper training, which will be creating the need, which will be creating them being hungry for the outcomes of the data they create, is very essential in the beginning to be set up, so that we can present, hey, this is what you can get if this is maintained properly. And that's where these insights, also what we have received from Hi Bob recently, the insights with the 360 feedbacks as an example over time and as a summary of all the feedbacks you have received, has been really amazing, as people were able also to see the impact, not only each individual text is there, but also a great, amazing summary which can be used for further development and focused individual development plan. So that's where, when actually making sure the data is clean, what has to be done is a proper alignment with everyone who's going to be working on this, on why we do this and how exactly it has to be done, so that we can be happy together with the result we will receive in the end, like in the next quarter, in the next 2 quarters. So that it's easy and supported by the technology as inserting it into the system, but at the same time insightful. Another thing what we have had was amazing. As a tool, as an example, we had to run really quickly after one of the big changes we had in the company. Really quickly, we needed to understand what is the actual situation within our teams, if we have any increased retention risks, if we are risking to lose big number of people, and this may impact our business further. So that's where we had to ask all our leaders to team up and in just 1 month insert all the data into the system on how do they see the potential risks in their teams, how do they analyze what's the probability, and how this may be impacting the business further. It was quite painful as an exercise. However, we did understand that some of the leaders did not structurally think about this question before in the way how we proposed them to think about it. And it made a really amazing effect when some leaders had actually amazing insights on how they look at their teams, how they evaluate what their teams are able to achieve, and their impact on the organization. Meanwhile, understanding better what they do as leaders to systematically make sure that they do not create retention risk themselves. And this has also motivated them to continue inserting the data into the system to see the progress and see time over time, year over year, but also at scale versus other teams, how they do this versus how it reacts in people and their potential risks and their impact on the organization. So one of the insights, helping the leaders do their job better.
No, no. I mean, some great examples there. Be clear on what information that you want to collect and why. So tell people what's in it for them and what that will help them with in their day-to-day work. I think that's really great. You talked about leveraging HiBob, or so leveraging your technology partners to actually kind of communicate this story out and understand what's possible within the different systems that you're using. And as you said, then great on a real life important example that's important to people, understanding what they need from an information perspective, what decisions it's going to help them to make, and then designing the data and the information you then provide from that data to actually help them to do that. I mean, that's just a perfect way of doing it. So it's really, really impressive, Elena. So a couple more questions. I'm really enjoying this conversation. We could end up having a 2-hour episode. Don't worry, we're not going to have a 2-hour episode, Elena, and people listening. But I'm interested, as an HR leader that's been an HR leader for a while, been working in the space, and obviously previously at PwC as well. Do you see AI and new ways of working leading to flatter, more networked organizations? Or do you think, or maybe that's a yes, but do we still need strong middle management? Because I know there's lots of opinions out there at the moment. I'd love to hear your opinion based on the fact that you actually work in a senior HR role in a company.
It's indeed a very interesting topic, and I'm pretty sure that many leaders are very curious about what's going to be the org design of us in the future, of the organizations of the future, and what would be the ratio of managers per employee. One of the top questions as well, and also one of the top, you know, arguments in between: are we too big in number of managers at this moment, or can we shrink down? And I do think that middle management is very essential and important to drive the results of the organization, as we do want to scale and we do want to help the organization deliver results as fast as possible. So we will need different levels of employee seniority, and that's where management is very essential. However, from what we see right now, and I connected also to the theory of different ages of different views at how we work, why we work, what motivates different generations to work. And it changes a lot to how the work is done regularly on daily routine basis and how the leaders should be doing that. So when it comes to middle management of the future, I would see that it's the organization is not going to be becoming more flat. Still, we are going to have big companies. However, the leadership must be shifting from just control to setting clear expectations, like clear expectations and setting the timelines to enabling what do we want to achieve so that there is clarity where we go in, why we're going there, what is the structure, what we want to see in the future together, and how do we collaborate together to make sure that it's happening. So this should be an invisible glue which is driving the results of each team and making them really focused on what has to be done, how, and why.
No, I love that. Love that. Got two more questions, Elena. Then we get to the questions of the series. So these are so first one. Let's say you get a CHRO. A CHRO listens to you on this podcast and thinks, "Oh, I'd like to ask Elena this." You know, they're scaling from 100 people to 1,000 people, and they already feel behind. What would your and again, I appreciate there's not one answer to this, but generally, what would your 90-day playbook look like?
90-day playbook is definitely roll up your sleeves. Make sure that you have a lot of energy and that you're resourceful. For an HR leader, I would be saying that build the foundations. And the foundations can start with what I started with. It was the systems, yes. Unless you have a systems, you're not be able to basically deliver what is expected from the company. For me, the foundations also have started, and I didn't mention this, but it's the most important is make sure that you have a strong team under you, that you have those employees, even if they are individual contributors, they should be leaders and experts in their field. So these foundations from the system perspective and enablers in the team for any C-level leader is very important. And then the second one would be establishing the performance and leadership frameworks so that you can ensure the delivery of the business results properly within expected timeframes and that it should be predictable results, building the predictability for the company, where we are going and what we are actually relying on. And then as early as possible after these two to make sure that you have a data discipline in place and the system to be supporting that.
No? Very
I
good.
made it. I made actually a how you say it a pause here, as the most valuable would be after all these items is the culture and values, which should be, I think, in any organization for now in place, so that people are connected by the idea and by the fact that they actually enjoy working in this organization, and this will be a magic cherry on top. However, I think it's going to be as in fairy tale. The whole thing will not work unless you have this magic thing on top.
I think that's back to what you said earlier, Elena, right at the start. That's perhaps the main way you connect people to business strategy by effectively doing that.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm going to get you to look in your crystal ball now, Elena, and no, we won't come back and test you on this, but there's two questions looking towards the future a bit. So first one, let's look 5 years out. Let's look to 2030. What do you believe will distinguish the HR leaders who thrive in the AI era from those that struggle?
I do think the major distinguisher will be a shift of the focus from hierarchies to ecosystems of talent, to the systems which are fluid, they're cross border, they AI powered, where each team will be responsible for designing the trust, fairness, the culture of reliability, and the future adaptability for the company, which will make it work. So for me, the major idea is to create sort of heaven for employees to make sure that they can focus on the main thing, is how to make this business as amazing as possible and grow as fast as possible and conquer the bigger population of customers and bring best results. And HR role would be to make sure that they have everything from the very bottom up in place to support that.
And that leads to the question of the series, which it might expand on what you've already got, or you might have something a little bit different or related to it. So the question of the series is, what's the single biggest shift in the future of work you foresee by 2030, and how can HR lead it?
Oh, the future is going to be very interesting for many people. And I do think that, if you would ask any person right now, would you want to look into the future, at least for the next 5 or 10 years, what's going to be happening? Everyone's like, yes, yes, of course, what's going to be happening to us in the AI era. And specifically for HR leaders, I think those leaders will be mostly distinguished among others, which can combine two things. The first one, and it's like you have to do it now, it's data literacy. You have to understand data, you have to work with data. Otherwise, it's not scalable, it's not up to date, it's blind, basically. Yeah. And data literacy is like a must have. Second one would be, for me, it would be about humans a lot, like human fluency. I was looking for this word. English is a second language, sorry.
Well, it's better than my Ukrainian, so you're doing very, very well.
Thank you. So it's about leading with empathy. It's understanding that each person, and I've been working in HR for over 17 years, and I still believe, and that's why I like working and I love working with people. It's when leading with empathy, understanding that if you provide the right atmosphere, the right support, the right motivation and vision and clarity to what you're trying to achieve, each person is able to become the most amazing and the best version of them. And this is, mastering those with thrive, like actually leading with understanding that human are amazing creatures which can become amazing in the future and are able to deliver even more, could be another changing factor to people really willing to join those organizations and then make those organizations even more successful. So data and people.
What a perfect way to end our conversation and end the episode. Olena, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you. It's been inspirational to listen to your story and what you're building at airSlate, and I know that many of our listeners are going to be similarly inspired and also be able to take a lot of practical examples and tips, I think, on their own journeys as well. So thanks very much for being on the show. Can you share with listeners how they can follow you on social media, maybe find out more about your work at airSlate?
Definitely. So the best place will be LinkedIn, where you will be able to find any news updates about the current state of things. And with this podcast, David, thank you for inviting me. I will be also more inspired to share some of the new thoughts on the topic of data and people.
Thank you. And I look forward to hopefully at some point meeting you in person, Olena, as well. So maybe at a HiBob event. I was at one of their hardcore events in London earlier this year, which was really impressive to hear about how a lot of HiBob customers are very data driven and data fluent and people fluent like you are as well. So that was good to see. Olena, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. It was really a pleasure, and see you soon then.
In this series, we will be speaking to a range of senior leaders who are pushing a data-driven and digital HR agenda. Make sure that you subscribe via your podcast app of choice and also via our YouTube channel for free and regular interviews with the digital HR leaders of the future.